Greetings, YouTube. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, this is Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, coming to you courtesy of Rogues Gallery Incorporated, and I'm back to bring you yet again another favorite villains video segment. Now, this week's favorite villains video segment, as well as my favorite heroes video segment, comes to you courtesy of GTA, aka Grand Theft Analysis. They recommended that I take a look at my favorite heroes and favorite villains from the Death Note series. Now, my favorite heroes video was dedicated to my man L, and of course, you all, it's so obvious, but my favorite villain from Death Note, and quite possibly my nostalgia purposes are preventing me from claiming him to be my favorite villain of all time, because I believe that title still belongs to Naraku from Inuyasha as my favorite anime villain of all time. But he is a close second, definitely a close second, and hands down one of my top 10 favorite anime characters, period. And that is the character of Light Yagami, aka Kira. Now we actually do have a little bit of a background and of a history for Light Yagami in comparison to L, who we didn't know much about L or his background other than he grew up in an orphanage. But Light Yagami, we actually do get a pretty solid background on this character at the start of Death Note, and that is Light Yagami is a 17-year-old high school senior, or was he 18 at the start? He was either 17 or 18 at the start. He was a high school senior because in the first, I want to say the first 10 or 12 episodes, after about the first 10 or 12 episodes, Light graduated from high school and was accepted into a university. Now, Light is the elder of two children. He has a younger sister whose name I cannot remember at this time, and then of course he has dad. He has a dad who is I'm trying to think, is his father a chief, or his father is a police officer, which is one of the conflicts in the series, is that Light, he discovers the Death Note and he becomes Kira and he starts passing judgment on all these criminals taking their lives, and his father is in charge of the task force, the Japanese police department task force that's been assigned to stop Kira. And then of course L is he becomes the head later on, but from the start his father was the one in charge of that investigation task force. But I'm trying to think, I don't think his dad was just a normal police officer. Now keep in mind, I am doing this video off of memory, and I have seen the Death Note series multiple times over, but I'm just trying to remember. I think his dad was like an officer. I don't think he was just a police officer. I think he was either a captain or a lieutenant or something like that, or a chief or something like that. Or shit, he could have been he probably was a detective now that I think about it. Anywho. And then, of course, I believe Light's mom is a stay-at-home mom. We don't get much background on Light's mom, but Light, he is a highly intelligent young man, super genius, if you will, top of his class, straight A's, and initially, Light, his initial career goal was to become a police officer, a detective, just like his father. Light had even helped solve previous cases in the past prior to the start of the series. But then, of course, as the series starts, Light finds a Death Note, which is a supernatural notebook that allows for you to write the name of a person, and as long as you have that person's face in mind when you write their name, that person will die. You can choose how they die. You can write as elaborately, as blankly and as elaborately as you want. You can write how they will die. Or if you don't, I believe after it's is it a minute and 40 seconds, something like that, they'll just die of a heart attack. And that's what That's what Light uses in order to become Kira. Now, Kira, just so you know, that's not a self-proclaimed title. That is a title that the masses have granted this mysterious killer of killers, if you will. Because the thing with Light, what he decides to do with the Death Note is he decides to use it to vanquish criminals. He decides to use it to pass judgment on criminals, you know? And so, of course, you know, this creates this type of vigilante / outlaw thing going on with Light, because in many people's eyes, Kira is a force for good. He is ridding the earth of very wicked people who have committed crimes, who have hurt and harmed people before. So, you know, he's kind of like Dexter in a way, you know. He's the killer of killers, okay? But on the other hand, to other law enforcement officials, you know, to other, I mean, shit, you can call them self-righteous people, he's no better than the people who he's judging. You know, he's still a killer. He's a mass murderer, you know. He's a serial killer. Just because his targets are killers and rapists and murderers and thieves and child molesters and embezzlers and shit like that. Just because the people he's judging are criminals in themselves, that doesn't make him any better. And you know what? For the most part, I was giving Light the benefit of the doubt within the first few episodes. But I want to say about episode 8, that's when Light just takes a full turn into villain. Like, yes, Light is a justifiable villain, but I want to say it's episode 7 and episode 8. By the time you get to episode 8, Light is just a villain. He just completely turns into a cold-hearted villain. Because before Light did things like, you know, outwit people in order to achieve his goals. But about a fourth into the series, that's when Light starts killing people who stand in his way in order to achieve his goals, and that's when he makes the full jump into villainy. It's one thing for him to pass judgment on criminals; it's another to kill people, innocent people who stand in his way of achieving his goals. You see what I'm saying? Now you're killing the innocent. That is what made his ass into a villain. Okay. Now, of course, you know, Light has another interesting thing worth mentioning. Light has, you know, this type of you can kind of call it a camaraderie. I would just call it an acquaintance. But, you know, with Ryuk, who is the Shinigami whose Death Note Light is in possession of. But here's the thing, though. They aren't really partners. And they don't come across as friends either. You know, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like this classmate thing almost, you know? Because that's the thing. Ryuk isn't an ally. And he's not a friend. I wouldn't even go as far as calling him a comrade. It's kind of weird. But it makes sense, you know, if you pay attention to the very beginning of the series, and then by the time you get to the end of this series, if you pay attention to what Ryuk tells Light, it makes perfect sense. But that was also cool. That worked, because that was another small conflict in the series, was the fact that Light never really could tell whether or not he could fully trust Ryuk, you know? And then, of course, throughout the, later on, especially in the second half of the series, Light starts enlisting the help of other people. And me personally, I think that's where Light fucked up. I think that's where Light's potential downfall began. Because it was one thing when it was just Light versus L, you know, one-on-one. And then, you know, Misa, she came along about halfway through the series and she kind of shook things up a bit. But it was still in Light's control. In the second half of the series, when Light starts enlisting the help of other people, that's where he fucked up. Because he was no longer in sole control of those people's actions, their motives, their intentions. he couldn't control that. You know, he couldn't control that. It kind of goes back into that whole idea of, you know, if you want something done right, do it yourself. You can't really rely on anyone but yourself. That type of thing. That was Light's strength in the first half of the series. And in the second half, shit got to the point where he needed help. But those people couldn't be trusted. And they weren't very reliable. Cause shit, I mean, spoiler alert, that's how Light wound up getting caught. Because of Yagami. Because Yagami fucked up. But why did I like Light? What made Light such a compelling character? Why is he one of my all-time favorite characters? Why is he my second all-time favorite villain in anime? Because very seldomly do we see, number one, a story where the central character is the antagonist. We don't see that very often. And that spin was very good because, honestly, in the first episode, who thought Light was a protagonist? I'm pretty sure everyone who's watching this video just raised their hands. I'm talking about when Light first discovered how to use the Death Note. In the first episode, before he even met Ryuk, who thought Light was a protagonist? Even at the end of the first episode, who thought he was a protagonist, right? We all thought he was. But man, by the time that second, third, fourth, fifth episode, nah, we knew immediately. It's like, nah, man, this is the bad guy. Also, Light is a very mechlomaniac. He's a mechlomaniac. He has a god complex the size of Everest. He even proclaims that he is going to become the god of the new world that he's trying to make at the beginning of the first episode. I kind of thought it was just him, you know, embellishing a little bit. I thought it was, you know, him exaggerating. But no. It gets to the point where he does consider himself to be God. And wow. Also, to draw more comparisons, man, On the Backs of Angels by Dream Theater, a dramatic turn of events. One of my viewers requested that I review that album. I am intrigued to do so. Anywho, but another thing about Light that I liked is Light. For all of those of you who have seen my, well, if you've seen my one of my old videos on my channel, it's I believe the name of it is Death Note. Overrated or underrated. It was a video response. I discussed the character of Light in that, but also more recently my favorite hero, favorite villains from Supernatural. My favorite villain, Lucifer. There are many parallels that you can draw between Light and Lucifer. Shit, Lucifer's name means light bringer. And then of course, you know, Light Yagami. And I'm trying to remember how was it Light wrote his name? Didn't he says like the characters for Light that made up his name were like Moon and something else, like something that was completely different from Light, you know? And then of course Light's whole depiction throughout the entirety of the series, you know, like this kind of godly-esque Jesus figure, you know, with the dark shadow behind him and shit like that. Like, honestly, if when you saw Light, you didn't think of Lucifer, man, you know, and then of course, you know, Light is he's a very good looking young man. You know, the whole idea that Lucifer was the most beautiful of the angels. But also, man, Light, what is Light's biggest flaw is his pride. Light has enormous pride, and of course that ultimately led to his downfall. Light thought he was too fucking smart for his own good. Well, no, correction. Light was too fucking smart for his own good. He thought that he could never be beat. He thought he could never be best. He thought no one would ever catch him. And yeah, didn't work out the way he planned to. But remember, the age-old saying, pride comes before the fall, man. And Light fell victim to it. let me see. I'm trying to think what else I can really talk about Light without giving too much away. Because once again, just like my L video, I don't want to give too much away about these characters because I want you guys to, you know, discover this shit on your own. For those of you who haven't seen the Death Note series is what I mean. Because those of you who have seen the Death Note series, you all know exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Light. But for those of you who haven't, first off, highly recommend it. One of my favorite anime of all time. Best anime I've seen within like the last 5 years, and it's definitely in my top 10 of all favorites of all time. It's very good, very well written, very well animated. The music, pacing, all of that shit is fantastic. No filler. 37 episodes. It is good from start to finish, people. So good. The ending is a bit different from the manga. The best way I can describe it is the manga is a lot harsher, but the same thing happens. The same events, you know, the same overall resolution occurs. There are just a few little things about how it happens that are different in the anime and the manga. But for the most part, man, the anime is spot on from the manga. And shit, I highly recommend the manga because the artwork in the manga is phenomenal. It's really good. Very, very good. But yeah, but I think that's about as much as I can say about Light without giving too much away. But so with that said, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna wrap this one up, guys. Once again, as always, what series should I do favorite hero, favorite villains for next? You know, comment below and then vote, thumbs them up to see. You know, like Death Note smashed the competition this week. Like Death Note had like what, 22 votes. I think the second closest series was maybe 9 votes, something like that. So just let me know. Also, comment, rate, subscribe to Rogues Gallery Incorporated. And also check out the other videos for my fellow Rogues Gallery Inc. members. Strapper24, Hugo Strange, J Mason 105, and Uncle Maine. And with that said, that'll wrap this up for me. This is Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off. And I'll catch you cats later. Peace.